Congressman Steve Scalise and aides, they're now saying 4 people have been shot. This was at a baseball practice in Virginia. And how would I switch? Am I able to switch to see if...
Yeah, just turn up the TV
I have to have
volume.
you come over here and switch the channel here for me, Andrew. Put it on, I don't know, CNN if you'd like, something like that. But the latest news that we know is that this congressman, Joe, this is quite interesting. They were out getting ready for a celebrity baseball game, and it was a fundraiser baseball game. And at 7 o'clock this morning, so it's early in the morning, almost you have to think that the shooter was targeting these people, right?
I would assume so.
You'd have to. I mean, I know that's just an assumption at this point, but let's see what we can.
Did they indicate they caught the shooter?
Congressman, do you know? I know that you described seeing a
I believe they do have somebody in custody
for help. And finally, there were first responders, and a helicopter landed. And do you know if it was Steve Scalise who was airlifted out?
I don't know. Two of the injuries appeared serious. Steve Scalise was prone the whole time, but it was a hip wound, and normally those are not as bad as hitting an internal organ. And then there was one of our security detail that was lying on the ground next to the vehicle, security detail vehicle, and he had a towel over his head, and he was immobile as he was being treated. So it had been one of those two. Hopefully those two had priority over the shooter.
And Congressman,
at least that's the way I would have done it.
Yeah, of course.
I'd have made the shooter last.
Congressman, can you tell us about this scene? How many of you were there for this practice ball game this morning?
They're saying the congressman who is the majority whip, Republican Steve Scalise, was shot along with some aides and possibly Capitol Police.
It is early in the morning, and we do have work early in the morning, and sometimes after people have gotten there.
The congressman that's speaking right now is Mo Brooks from Alabama. He was also at the practice. So it seems like this was a practice of at least a cluster, at least 2 congressmen, and that he witnessed the shooting. Joe, what's going on here? I mean, is it just, are we so polarized?
I just think that there's just a lot of hate and vitriol going on right now, and it's affecting all walks of life.
Yeah,
frankly.
2, they're saying that it was a congressman along with an aide and 2 Capitol Police officers were shot, according to the latest that's coming out right now.
Obviously, going to that batting cage, sure, it was just plastic. You were saying that was around it, but it was better than nothing. You made your way to the dugout where there were other staffers there. You're saying you're not sure how long this took, but you're saying you heard at least dozens of rounds before the security detail was able to exchange fire. Is that right?
I would think 10 or 20 rounds from the rifle before I heard anything coming from our side, the first base side. But keep in mind, I could miss some of those shots. I don't know how long it took the security detail to engage, and I'm sure they were astonished as we were. It takes a while for the realization to hit. Then you got to figure out who the shooter is, where he is, and how you're going to respond when you've got pistols and he's got a rifle. But they exhibited, once they started engaging, they exhibited great courage. I must confess, the first shot that I heard was after I'd already gotten past the batting cage. Some time had passed as I was lying on the ground. I figured out this is not really a good place to be if that shooter goes around the third base dugout towards home plate on the outside of the fence, because then he'd have a clean shot at us lying on the ground. So that's when I ran to the dugout, helped apply a tourniquet with my belt to one of our staffers who was shot in the leg. And then, boom, about 5 feet from my head, I hear another shot. I did not know if it was a second shooter until I saw that it was one of our security detail. That's when I looked up. And so that's how long it took for me to first notice one of our side shooting back, but I would suspect that they reacted a lot more quickly than that. As you can imagine, my attention was not necessarily focused on them.
Yeah. Congressman, we're looking at live pictures right now from WJLA of the scene, the aftermath there. You can see yellow police tape and people beginning to crowd around, trying to figure out what happened. You have, Congressman, remarkable recall of all of the details and what happened, and you have a good description of the gunman who we believe is in custody. You say that you believe he was a middle-aged white man, heavy-set. Was he saying anything? You were close enough, chillingly, to be able to get a look at him and to watch him firing his gun. Was he saying anything?
No, he was not saying anything, and I probably, while I was on the third base side of home plate, saw him fire 3, 4, 5, 6 times before I figured out that I needed to be a whole lot smarter under these circumstances, and standing there watching him was not a good idea.
Shows you anything like this can happen. Here's something to think about. The Congresswoman was saying, our Congresswoman was saying, she felt that her life was in danger, not necessarily hers, but other constituents when it comes to doing a town hall meeting. This certainly will shake people up a little bit, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Again, it seems a bit off the page that someone would take a weapon and start firing at elected officials and their staff, but
and obviously there's not a ton of information about what inspired this. Just something that occurred to me, though. He's a Louisiana representative, and this occurred in Virginia, so it's not this isn't contradicting anything that's been said, but this isn't necessarily a local constituent that targeted him.
Well, that we know of.
That we know of.
It could have been homegrown ISIS.
It could have been. That's true.
You don't know.
You don't know at this point. But the fact that there were other Congress people there makes you feel like this was some sort of obviously it's 7:15 in the morning. It's in a baseball field.
I'm curious.
It's got to be something that is targeted.
If there was some kind of photo op, or whether there was a press release or something that might have
let everybody know, hey, you can come out here. They're going to be doing a practice, getting ready for the big game. Yeah, we don't know at this point. All right, we'll break, come back.